Welcome to the Valley of David and Goliath at the Bible Lands Museum, Jerusalem. We're about to see a very, very beautiful exhibition about a fascinating site that was excavated a few years ago, not far from the Elah Valley, the famous place where the battle between David and Goliath took place, as we read it in the Bible. This is the first time that the audience has the opportunity to see the fascinating finds that were excavated during 7 seasons, archaeological seasons, in this extraordinary site. Our story begins in 2006 when the archaeologist Sar Ganor of the Israel Antiquities Authority approached his professor at the Hebrew University, Professor Yossi Garfinkel, and suggested to him to excavate a very, very interesting site overlooking the Elah Valley. This site can be seen in this photograph that was shot during the excavations. We can see the excavated areas. This is a hilltop overlooking the Elah Valley, and what attracted Sar was that surrounding the site there is a fence, and the fence was sitting on a much earlier building, which came to be the fortification of the site. This, together with pottery shards from the Iron Age, really attracted Sar, and Yossi was convinced that this site should be excavated. And during 7 seasons, they actually found a biblical city in the size of 5.7 acres in a very, very strategic and important place. Okay, the map that you see here is a topographical map which shows us the southern part of Israel, of the land of Israel, and we can see the different geographical areas. The southern coastal plain, which is known from the Bible as the land of the Philistines, with the 5 cities: Gaza, Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, and Gat. And on the other side, the hill country, the Judean hill country, where the Israeli tribes were settled down. In between, we can see the area where Khirbet Qeiyafa is located on the Elah Valley, between 2 important locations. As indicated in the biblical story in the first book of Samuel about David, the battle between David and Goliath, we know that the battle took place in the Elah Valley between Socho and Azekah. And Khirbet Qeiyafa is located right between those 2 sides. They can be seen from the hilltop. So this was a very important strategic area because it's the boundary between those 2 entities, between the Philistines on one side and the Israelite tribe on the other side. And since this is a very, very attractive and fertile area, the 2 entities were fighting and quarreling about this area, as indicated in the biblical story, which probably gives us the geopolitical situation, the struggle between the Israelites and the Philistines. We are located now in the entrance to the exhibition, and this entire space was designed as the gateway, as the gatehouse of Qeiyafa. We try to imitate the 4-room gate. You see the different cells, and in each one of them probably something else happened. In this particular area, you can see a standing stone, or a matzeva as it is known in the Bible, probably a cultic spot in the entrance to the city. And above it we can see a quotation from the book of Kings talking about the cultic reform done by one of the last kings of Judah, Josiah, who is said to break down the shrines of the gates, which were on one's left at the city gate. And it is very interesting to find this matzeva, this standing stone, as you enter into the city on your left side. One of the interesting things about Khirbet Qeiyafa is the fact that the excavators did not find only one gate, like the southern gate that we entered through, but another gate. And in such a small site of 5.7 acres, to find 2 gates is something very, very intriguing. You know that the gates were very vulnerable. This was the most convenient access into the city. That is the reason why it had to be protected. And the question why we have in such a small site 2 gates, one facing Philistia, the western gate, and the southern gate facing Judah, is a question. The excavators raised here a very interesting suggestion to identify Qeiyafa with a biblical site, which is known from the story of David and Goliath. In the book of Samuel, it is said that after David killed Goliath, the Philistines were terrified and they were running away towards Gath and Ekron. But they were going through the way of Shaaraim. And Shaaraim in Hebrew means two gates. So the fact that we have a site with two gates located in the same area is very, very interesting, this suggestion to identify it with the biblical site. This is, of course, only a suggestion. We enter now into the domestic area in the exhibition. What we have here is a model of one of the houses that was excavated in the site near the southern gate. It's one of the typical houses at Khirbet Qeiyafa. First of all, we can see that it was built adjacent or abutting the city wall, which is visible here. And we can see also an open area, which was the yard in which the kitchen was located, with the preparation of food, and maybe stock animals were also kept there. But another interesting thing about this house was that in this area here they found a cultic room with all kinds of cultic vessels and elements that indicate that the people had their own cultic activity inside the houses. We are now looking at the kitchen of the houses at Khirbet Qeiyafa. The vessels that can be seen here are cooking vessels and instruments for preparing food. And it's very interesting to learn from this what was their diet, and also if we can, from this material culture, learn about the inhabitants of Qeiyafa. First of all, let's have a look at this plate over here with some olive pits, burned olive pits. Actually, these are the real heroes at Khirbet Qeiyafa. The reason for that is that because of these olive pits, the excavators could determine what was the time period of the existence of Qeiyafa. Samples of 28 olive pits were sent to laboratories for carbon-14 dating, and when the results came back, it really astonished the entire archaeological and historical community. All the samples came back with the dating between 1020 to 980, meaning that we are in the end of the 11th century and the beginning of the 10th century BCE. And that's a very, very important and debated period in the archaeological and historical biblical world, because this is the time when King Saul, when the prophet Samuel and David established his kingdom. And the big question is, if can we actually see Khirbet Qeiyafa as part of this period of those events that are documented in the Bible. Looking at the diet of the people, according to animal bones that were found, more than 12,000 animal bones that were found in the site related to the ancient city, the archaeologists could establish what was the diet of the inhabitants. And here we can see in this chart over here that mainly they ate goats and sheep, also cows, and some fish and other winged animals. Okay? If we compare this to the adjacent Philistine site of Gath, Tel Safi, we can see that one element that is seen in the Philistine cities is absent at Khirbet Qeiyafa, and this is, of course, the pig. Okay, the domesticated pig, which is a typical element which was found in the Philistine sites. This, together with the pottery, the fact that Philistine pottery, which is visible at Khirbet Qeiyafa, but in very, very small amounts, much less than if you compare it to the amount of pottery found in Philistine sites, again, like Gath, like Ekron, like Ashkelon, means that probably we are not dealing here with a Philistine site, but something else. And the big question is then, who were the inhabitants? Are they, as the excavators believe, Judeans or Israelites? And this site should be seen as part of maybe the expansion of David's kingdom, because it is said in the Bible about David that he actually expelled the Philistines and drove them away from the hill country towards their land, the southern coastal plain. or maybe it is something else, as some excavators or other archaeologists believe that this might be a Canaanite enclave. Okay, that's the big debate. We can see here in this plate a sample of animal bones. Okay, more than 12,000 animal bones of different animals were found in different areas in the ancient city. And the diet of the inhabitants of Qeiyafa, of ancient Qeiyafa, can be established from those animals. One of the most fascinating issues about Khirbet Qeiyafa is the cult. Can we learn from the cultic vessels and elements that were found in the site about, again, the cultic practice and maybe the religion of the inhabitants? No central temple was found at Khirbet Qeiyafa, but cultic activity was found in the city gate, in the gate square, but also in private houses, in cultic rooms. And here we have a sample of some of the most really intriguing artifacts. In the middle here we can see what is believed to be shrine models. These are actually models of probably real shrines or temples that existed probably at that time. Here, for example, we can see one made of pottery, and it was preserved even with the door to the entrance. 3 such models were found in the cultic rooms inside the private houses, and it is very interesting to ask what they were searched for. One idea is that they were imitating a real shrine, and their purpose was to express the existence of the divinity inside the dwelling in order to, of course, protect the inhabitants. One of the most really astonishing finds at Khirbet Qeiyafa, which is unique in the entire world, is this shrine model, which is unique in the fact that it is made or carved in limestone, different from the other shrine models, which are known also from other sites, and they were made of pottery. In this case, we see a quite large box in the height of 35 centimeters, all carved in limestone, so a lot of energy was needed in order to produce something amazing like this. And we can see very interesting architectural elements in the facade of the temple. One thing is the introverting frames, which point to the entrance, and the second thing are those squares that are hatched with three line each. These elements probably are imitation in stones of the wooden roof beams that actually roofed the building, and we know them as a very known element in the Greek world, in the classical world, and it was a surprise to find it here for the first time, not in the Aegean world in Greece, but here in the land of Israel, dating a few hundred years earlier than the earliest examples known in Greece. A very interesting suggestion by the excavators was to find those elements in the biblical text, the very, very difficult biblical text in the Book of Kings about the Solomonic building projects in Jerusalem, including the Solomonic Temple and also the Palace of Solomon. And here we can see a reconstruction of the facade of the Solomonic Temple with the 2 pillars, Yachin and Boaz, including these elements, the introverting frames and the roof beams inserted inside the building. The fact that those shrine models were found at Khirbet Qeiyafa in such an early date means that the inhabitants had a notion about how monumental buildings, temples, and maybe palaces were looking like, and this is another indication for the complexity and the advanced stage of the population at Khirbet Qeiyafa. The excavators found at Khirbet Qeiyafa a well-planned and fortified city, dating 3,000 years ago to the time period of David, of Samuel, and King Saul. And the big question is, can we really relate to it the events that are recorded in the Bible? According to the finds, the excavators believe that Qeiyafa was actually built in that time by the Israelites or the Judahites, and it's actually a footprint in the ground of the existence of the Judahite kingdom in the time of David in a very early stage. The reason for that is that, according to the Bible, it was David that drove away the Philistines from the hill country to their lands. And in this scenario, Khirbet Qeiyafa was actually built on the border between Judah and Philistia as a kind of protection to the young kingdom of David. Unfortunately for the inhabitants, they did not survive for a long time. The excavators believe that Qeiyafa existed for no more than 30 or 40 years, and according to their reconstruction, actually at a certain point when the Philistines were stronger, maybe after the time of David, they conquered the site and its inhabitants never returned.